It looked like somebody was bent over and had their head in the window of the deer blind. It either heard me or smelt me, and he pulled his head out of the tent and stood straight up, and that shocked me. They don't make people that big.
The way it moved, almost as if it was gliding across the beach. I've never seen anything move like that in my life. They were screaming at each other in gibberish. It sounded like a language, and they were chuntering away back and forwards, back and forwards, back and forwards. I know what a bear looks like, and there is no way on this planet that what I saw were bears.
911, what are you reporting?
Jesus Christ, you better...
Sir?
Gia!
Hello?
Get somebody out here.
What's going on now, sir?
That son of a bitch is about 6'9", I don't know.
Do you see him now, sir?
Yes, I'm looking right at him.
Uh-oh.
Hey, this is Kason from East Tennessee, and you're listening to Sasquatch Chronicles.
Welcome to the show, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. Got a great show planned for you. Tonight, we're going to be chatting with Jennifer. And Jennifer was a working professional, huge member in the community, is retired now, still a major member of the community. I don't want to say it like that, but you know what I mean. She's retired now, and I wish I was. But a couple weeks ago, Jennifer and her family were out in Georgia, and they had a kind of a long night out there, and Jennifer was telling me about it, and I asked her if she'd come on the show and share it, because a lot of these type of encounters go on, and people are confused afterwards. They have no idea what happened or what was going on. And we're also going to be chatting with Scott, and Scott had an encounter in the 70s, early 70s, out there in Ohio when he was a small boy. If you've had an encounter and you'd like to be on the show, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. And if you get a chance to check out sasquatchchronicles.com, you can become a member and get additional shows. Tomorrow night, I'm going to release my Blind Frog Ranch interview. It's kind of a short interview. It's going to be a video short. I'm going to put it up as a video podcast. I think it's going to be about 10, 15 minutes, that sort of thing. And I really don't know much about the Blind Frog Ranch, to be honest with you. The first time I heard about it, Russell Accord from Expedition Bigfoot, him and I were just kind of BSing one day, and he said, I went out to this ranch and they got this, it's almost like a spring you get into, this water. And he goes, on paper, the water's freezing. No one would last more than 20 seconds in this water. It's that cold. He goes, but what's weird is the way it interacts with your body when you get in. He goes, Wes, it feels like a really warm bath. I mean, you could sit there and sit in it all day long, which I've never heard of before. It's weird. I really want to check out the water. But anyway, I was talking with Discovery, and they asked me if I would interview the guys from Blind Frog Ranch, and I was like, yeah, I'm happy to interview them. And it's kind of a fascinating. There's a lot of weird things going on that ranch. One thing I think is cool about their ranch, again, I've never been out there, I've never really seen the show, but one thing that I think is cool about the Blind Frog Ranch is they invite people to come out and take a look at this stuff. A Skinwalker Ranch, good luck, you're going to need a small army getting in there. So it's kind of cool. I don't know about this water thing. I guess people have had chronic pain, chronic issues, and they've gotten into this water, and then when they get out, and even the guys from the ranch don't want to say it's healing water, but a lot of people have have been healed, have done well after getting out of this water. And I'm trying to figure out why. Is there like an electric current through the water? Is there something's going on with that water? And why is it feels warm when you get in it, but if you put a thermometer in there, there's no way you would ever get in that water. It's too cold. It's strange. So anyway, I'll be releasing that probably tomorrow night or Tuesday. And on your podcast player, there'll be a video so you can kind of see what we're seeing. Thank you again for being here tonight. Let's actually jump into it. I want to welcome Scott to the show. Scott, thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Wes.
Yeah, Scott. And I know in the early 70s, you had an encounter out there in Ohio. If you would you start from the very beginning? Kind of tell us what you were doing and walk us into what happened.
Well, my brother and a friend of mine down the street, we would go to a train trestle that went over Hog Creek. The creek at the trestle had a sandbar that came off and it was 5 to 6 feet deep in that area. And we'd go swimming there and walking to the trestle. We would walk out of our neighborhood, across a 2-lane country road into a cornfield, and you'd come out of the cornfield into a woods. Well, if you cut the corner of that woods, you shorten the walk, then you'd come out into a soybean field, onto the tracks, and about a quarter mile down to the trestle. Well, we took hot dogs and hot dog buns out there. We were going to have hot dogs after we got done swimming, and we forgot the matches. So my brother goes, "Scott, go back to the house and get some matches." No big deal. I'm going through the soybean field. I walk into the woods, and I get about halfway through the woods, and something catches my eye to my left. And I stopped, and I turned and I looked, and behind this big giant oak tree, something standing behind it. And the reason I guess it caught my eye was the sun was behind its back, and the way the sun was hitting the hair on the shoulder, it just lit this thing up, and it just stood out like a sore thumb. And I stared at it for about 10 seconds. Then I turned and I looked at my feet, and I'm thinking to myself, why is this very big man in the woods with a winter coat on in the summertime? And I turned back and I looked at it, and I must have stared at it for a good 20 or 30 seconds. And I could see the shoulder, the whole arm. I could not see its hand because of the small saplings that were in front of it. I could see his right leg down to his knee. Then the saplings covered the rest of it. And it was swaying back and forth, left to right, about 2 inches. And every time he would sway to the right, I would catch a glimpse of the side of its head, but not far enough to see an eye. And I couldn't take my eyes off this. I mean, I'm thinking, monster. There's something standing behind that tree. And I remember thinking also that it was like a football player wearing shoulder pads with my mom's fur coat on. The shoulder had to be at least 7 feet off the ground. The arm was huge. I couldn't believe how big the shoulder was. And after that 20 or 30 seconds staring at this, I turned back around, looking at my feet again, telling myself, there's a monster in the woods and you need to go now. And I turned one more time to look at it. And like I said, it was swaying back and forth. I never saw an eye on the right side of its head, but the shoulder and the arm was just, it was so big. I couldn't move. Then I finally was able to move, and I ran back to the house, and 2 hours later, my brother and Larry come back to the house and say, "Hey, what happened to you?" I said, "I saw something." "What'd you see?" "I don't know." And the very next day, I was back in the woods again, but a different woods that was directly behind our house. And it was just kind of forgotten. I don't understand why the next day I was back in the woods like it never had even happened. But there was tree forts to go to. And that was my encounter.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. I think it's perspective. I think it's a kid's perspective, and I'll talk to kids, and they're out. After they've seen the creature at their window, they're out playing around in the yard the next day. Let me ask you, how far away do you think the creature was when you saw it?
No more than 30 feet. It was very close. In fact, when the next time I did walk out to the trestle, I stopped where that tree was, and I was rather nervous, actually. And when I noticed that there was nothing standing behind it, I walked up to the tree, and I was looking at the area of the tree where that shoulder was, and 7.5 feet easily.
Yeah, thing's huge, Scott. Thing is absolutely huge. And let me ask you, what year did this happen in? I know it was early 70s, but I can't imagine a lot of people were talking about Bigfoot in Ohio in the early 70s. Maybe they were. I don't know.
This was 1974. I was 10 years old. And the only thing I knew about Bigfoot back then, we had a book called Unsolved Mysteries, and one page had the famous picture of Nessie at Loch Ness, and it had the Patterson picture when she turned and looked at them. And that's the only thing I knew about Bigfoot. In fact, I didn't even think Bigfoot when I was looking at this. I was thinking monster.
Yeah, I would imagine, especially in that time frame, Scott. Even today, most people run into this thing and they'll say monster. Most people don't say Bigfoot and Sasquatch. They'll say monster. And, that behavior of them rocking from left to right, we hear that a lot. And I don't know if it's a nervous behavior or why they're doing that. So you're looking at this thing and it's kind of behind a tree going from left to right. I would imagine most of its face was covered by the tree.
Yes, the oak tree was huge. I mean, it was extremely wide at the trunk. And, thank God he didn't expose his face. I don't know what I would have done if that had happened. But I couldn't hear any breathing. No noise came from it. It stayed behind this tree. I don't know who saw who first, but...
Let me ask you, so you go back to the house or to your brother and you look white as a ghost. He asks you what's wrong and you say, I saw something, but you didn't really tell anyone beyond that what you actually saw. And as a 10-year-old boy, the way you're describing it to me is, this very large man wearing a fur coat, which even I've heard adults say that too as well. But did you ever get a chance to tell anyone in your family what you actually saw?
I never told anybody, until the person in the next story. I told him about it. I told my brother a few years ago for the first time. I said, hey, remember that time we went to the trestle, forgot matches? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, and you didn't come back? I said, yeah. And he goes, and you said you saw something? I said, yeah. He goes, what did you see? And he's just like, oh my God. Are you serious? I said, yeah. He goes, why didn't you say anything? I said, I didn't know what it was. I thought it was a monster. And I thought you guys would have said, yeah, right. So I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything to mom and dad. I didn't say anything to any of my friends because they would have laughed at me and thought I was nuts. So I just kept it in the back of my mind.
Yeah, it always amazes me how many encounters come out, Scott, from like the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And I think back then, and people have held it this whole time. They've never told a soul. And I think now it's starting to become more acceptable. It's kind of like in the 50s when you said, hey, I saw a UFO, everyone thought you were nuts. Today, not so much.
No, it's too commonplace now. And with these sightings, people are seeing something. And I can't imagine if I did see the whole thing. Just seeing what I saw, I was frozen in my tracks. I couldn't move. Even if I had wanted to, I couldn't move. I did not know what I was looking at. And like I said, with the way the sun hit the top of its shoulder, it just lit the hair up on the shoulder. And it was so out of place against that oak tree. And I was thinking monster.
Yeah, I would imagine. Seeing it for the first time, I think that's probably how 99% of everyone feels. You know, they think monster. I know there was another strange incident that really wasn't Sasquatch related, but you were telling me portions of it earlier, and I wanted to hear the whole thing. And you made reference to that guy earlier. You said you had mentioned it to the guy. Was he with you when this other incident happened?
Yes. When I was 17, I worked for a janitorial company. And the owner and my boss, we got along really good. And he would come by, with a 6-pack of beer, and we'd go out and drink. Or we were driving out in the country one night, and we got to the point where I did not know where I was. We went that far out. And he goes, "Oh, I know where we are." He goes, "This is my old milk route." I said, "Okay, well, since you know where you are, I'll keep going the direction we're going." And we're driving along, and it's 11:30 at night. And we come upon this old farmhouse and barn. And I said, "Wow," I said, "that's an old farmhouse." And he goes, "Yeah, great." And I looked at him. I said, "What's your problem?" And he goes, "What?" I said, "The way you just said that, it didn't sound too good." He goes, "It's a farmhouse. You want me to get excited?" I said, "No." I said, "What's wrong with that farmhouse?" He goes, "Nothing." He goes, "Leave it alone." I said, "No, I'm not going to leave it alone." I said, "What's wrong with the farmhouse?" He goes, "It's haunted." I said, "No, it's not." He goes, "Actually, it is." I said, "Really?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "I was in the house when I was a senior in high school." And at the time, he was 28 years old. He said it was July. It was a warm summer night. Him and 3 friends went out to this farmhouse because they had heard it was haunted. So they went out there and they broke into the house. And he said they went upstairs, and he said what was weird was the 4-bedroom doors upstairs, every door was closed. So it was kind of scary opening these doors, going into these rooms. And nothing was in the rooms. The house was completely empty. So they walked downstairs, and they're standing in the kitchen. And he said it was a very warm night. He goes, "We were sweating that night." And they were just standing around the kitchen, goofing around, saying, "Ooh, scary." And one of his friends goes, "Oh, this place isn't haunted. Let's get out of here." And when he said that, all 4-bedroom doors, one at a time, slammed shut. Then something came down the stairs like it was pissed off. And they froze. They couldn't move. They're all staring at the entrance to the kitchen. And on the other side of the entrance was the stairs. And they're just staring. Then all of a sudden, all 4 of them could see their breath. So that's when they got the nerve to run.
Yeah, that's pretty terrifying. That'd be enough to make me want to leave.
Especially somebody or something coming down the stairs like it was pissed off. I think it would have froze me in my tracks too. I mean, I think that would have been scarier than seeing your breath.
Yeah, and seeing your breath seems to be something that happens in a lot of these encounters. A lot of encounters I've read and people kind of recounting what happened to them. They see their breath, the room gets really, really cold. So he tells you this story, but as you and I were talking earlier today, you guys actually went back after he told you this story.
Well, about 2 months later, again, we're driving around. It's 12 o'clock at night or so. And he kept, I don't know how we ended up in the same area, but he kept falling asleep because he had a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning. One of the janitors called him, said they had a problem at the building, so he had to go in, and he had been up all day long. And he was nodding off. I kept waking him up, and one time I woke him up. He goes, "Hey," he goes, "you need to find a place to pull over so I can go to the bathroom." I said, "Okay." And not more than 30 seconds after I said, "Okay," he fell asleep again. Well, as soon as he fell asleep, there's the house. So I pull into this limestone driveway and drive past the barn. Barn's to the left, house is to the right. I go past the barn, and there's about a 20-foot path of grass on the backside of the barn. Then after the grass is a cornfield. So I pull in there and I stop, shut the car off, and hit him in his arms and said, "Hey, go use the bathroom." He wakes up. He looks to his right, and he's looking at a cornfield. He looks to his left, and he sees barn door that the doors slide open and close. Then he looks behind him, and he sees the house. And Wes, this man's eyes, I thought were going to come out of his head. He's like, "No, you're not." I said, "Jason," I said, "we're outside. Don't worry about it. Go to the bathroom. Do what you need to do." And he was begging and pleading me, "Please leave. I'll go to the bathroom somewhere else." I said, "Oh, come on." I said, "We're outside. What's going to happen?" I finally talked him into it. He went outside. He went to the bathroom. He comes back into the car. And I had already opened my car door, and my left leg was hanging out the car, resting on the ground. And between the two doors, there was about a 12-inch gap where you could see through the barn, and you could see the road on the other side. And the moon was very bright that night. And we were sitting there talking, and that's when I told him about my encounter. He goes, "Scott, you saw a Bigfoot." I said, "Is that?" He goes, "Yeah, that sounds like a Bigfoot. This is what you saw." He goes, "You didn't see a monster. You saw a Bigfoot." I said, "Oh, my God." And I was telling him, I said, "I remember it like it was yesterday." And we're talking, and the only way I can describe this is it was 2 feet, went from one side of the barn to the other. And it wasn't a walking pattern in the feet. It was like somebody was sidestepping all the way across the barn. And I was looking at him to see if he could hear it, because he heard it over himself talking, and he stopped talking, and I was staring at him. I wish I would have been looking at the barn door to see if I could see something go past that opening. And I go, "Did you hear that?" He goes, "Yeah, I heard that." He goes, "You want to go?" And I started to get out of the car. I said, "No, let's go see what it was." He grabbed me by the collar of my shirt, pulled me back into the car so hard where he ripped my collar. He goes, "Close that door, start the car. We're leaving now. We're not going to go into the barn and see what made that noise." He goes, "Because I can tell you right now, and you know also, that what you just heard was not a dog, it wasn't a coyote, wasn't a raccoon, wasn't a possum, wasn't a skunk. Those were 2 feet." I said, "Yeah, they were." He goes, "And we're not going to go in the barn and look." He goes, "We're leaving right now." He goes, "I am your boss, and I'm the owner of the company you work for. I'm telling you right now, start the car." So I said, "Okay." So I closed the door, start the car. The 76 Monte Carlo's got the bench seats. So back then you'd throw up your right arm on top of the seats and turn around and back up. Well, I started rolling backwards before I actually got my head turned around to look out the back window. And as soon as my head turned to look out the back window, I slammed on the brakes, and Jason's head just did a whiplash. And he's going, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I just ran over some lady." He's like, "What?" I said, I just ran over some lady. I said, she was wearing a white bonnet thing on her head, light blue dress with a white apron, like something that they'd be wearing in the early 1900s. Looks like she was out hanging laundry outside. He goes, no, you didn't. I'm opening the car door. He goes, Scott, where are you going? I said, Jason, I just ran over some lady. I walked behind the car, and my knees are shaking so bad I can barely even walk. I get on my hands and knees. I'm looking underneath the car. There's nothing there. I walk around the passenger side. I'm looking. I walk around to the front of the car, and I fell because my knees just gave out on me. And Jason, I hear the car door open, and he's like, Scott, where are you? What's wrong? He thought something grabbed my legs and dragged me underneath the car. He comes running out. He goes, what happened? I said, I can't walk. My knees are shaking so bad. He goes, you need help? I said, no, I think I can stand up. And I finally stood up, got in the car. We left, got a couple of miles away from the house. And I pull over, and he goes, what are you doing? I said, I need to stop driving right now. I said, I'm shaking so bad. I said, I need a moment, please. I need a moment. He goes, okay, I can understand that. So that's my backing over a ghost encounter.
Yeah, this encounter really fascinates me, Scott. And the reason why, a lot of times in Sasquatch encounters, people will describe them doing bizarre things that they shouldn't physically be able to do. And I'll ask the person a lot of times, so what you saw was very physical, right? It wasn't like a ghost. And people will go, yeah, it was very, very, very physical. This thing was flesh and blood, but it was doing, X, Y, and Z. And what I find fascinating about this account is the fact that you actually got out of the car. You didn't think it was a ghost. You actually thought you hit a woman.
She was as clear as flesh and blood. I mean, it was that clear. And like I said, the moon was really bright that night, and she was standing behind the car. Now, what the story is on this house was, the house was actually built in 1832. And in 1902, husband, wife, and 3 kids were murdered in that house. And when he researched it in the county that it was in at the library, when he asked about the address of that house, he said an older woman that was working at that library said, well, what do you want that information for? And he goes, I just want to check it out. She goes, if you're planning on going there, don't. So I guess it was well known. A year later, a few of my friends were all hanging out, and we got bored, couldn't find anything to do. It was January, snow's on the ground, and Mark goes, you remember where that house is? I said, yeah, I do, actually. And Bill and Trip are going, no. And Mark's brother Todd goes, yeah. He goes, you said there's a storm cellar door behind the house. I said, yeah, there is. I said, I don't know if they put basements in houses back then, but maybe it's a basement. And if we can break into the cellar door or go down in the basement, go up the basement stairs into the house. So we're like, anybody have tire iron or flashlights or everything? And we got stuff together, and we drove out to the house, and we parked behind the barn where I ran the ghost over. There's 5 of us standing behind this house, breaking the lock off the cellar door. And we open the doors, and we go flying down the stairs into a 20 by 30 fruit cellar. It didn't go up into the house. We go walking up the stairs, and Mark goes, Scott, give me that tire iron. I said, what are you going to do? He goes, I'm going to make a hole in this plywood that's over the window and see if I can get my fingers behind the plywood and yank this plywood off the window. So he starts chipping away at it because he couldn't get the pry bar. He couldn't get between the edge of the plywood and the window frame. He couldn't get it in between there. So he starts chipping away at it. Then Bill takes over, and he makes a hole. And there's a second piece of plywood behind the first piece of plywood. And we're going, what the hell? Well, Bill makes a hole through the second piece of plywood and he starts hitting the glass. On the other side of the glass, on the inside of the house, was more plywood. And we're like, wow, I don't think they want anybody to break into this house. So we gave up and went home.
Yeah, I hear you. I know you're 17. You're 17 at this time. It's probably best you guys went home. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it was at best that we didn't get inside. But the upstairs windows, the doors, every window had plywood over it. Evidently, they didn't want anyone getting into that house anymore.
Yeah, I think sometimes those things are better left alone. But it's still a scary account, especially going back and seeing what you thought was a person and running it over. What a strange event in your life.
It was, like I said, when I got to the front of the car, I just fell. My legs just gave out on me. They were shaking so bad because I knew what had just happened. But she looked so real, and I actually thought I ran her over. And when I looked underneath the car the first time, and there was nothing there. It hit me that you just saw a ghost.
Yeah, most ghost encounters I hear off the air. Not a lot of them I hear on the air. So thank you for sharing it. Such a weird account too of this ghost you thought was a lady and you thought you ran her over. It's a crazy account, man. After 40 years of having this Sasquatch encounter happen to you and all the time you've had to think about it and kind of listen to other people's encounters, what's your opinion, Scott? What do you think Sasquatch is?
The dreaded question. You got to say primate. That's got to be in there. There's got to be human DNA. There's got to be. I don't know if you saw the report David Paulides did on the DNA, where they found human DNA in the females, but they did not find human DNA in the males. Am I correct on that?
Yeah, it wasn't David's study. It was Dr. Ketchum's study. And I've actually spoken to Melba. I've asked her to come on the show. Very sweet lady. I think we've kind of become friends. We're kind of kindred spirits, and she probably knows more about weird ancient history than I do. And so every time we talk, it seems like we talk about that instead of Sasquatch. But that's neither here nor there. But it was Dr. Ketchum's study. I'm aware of what you're talking about.
So where do you go from there? What are the males? I mean, I have to admit that I think they've been here for thousands of years. Just like UFOs, they've been here probably long before we ever came. I mean, there's evidence everywhere.
Yeah, there's definitely evidence of them being everywhere. It's trace evidence, but it's evidence. And you could be right about as far as them being an ancient hominid running around before we were even here. Let me ask you this. You've had the Sasquatch encounter when you were 10, and then later when you were 17, 18, you had this ghost encounter. What terrifies you more, Sasquatch or ghosts?
Like I said, if that thing had stepped out from behind the tree, and if I would have saw the whole thing, and God forbid that if that thing had screamed or roared, I would have to say the ghost. I never once thought that ghosts, spirits, entities, even as a kid, couldn't exist. I always thought that, yeah, it can happen. I think there's ghosts. As for Bigfoot, like I said, there was didn't think much about it. It was something you didn't hear about back then. or at least the people that I ran around with, and it was pretty much unknown.
I hear you. It's one of those things to where I think they're both equally terrifying. At least I don't think you can put a bullet in a ghost, but I'm pretty sure you can put a bullet in Sasquatch. And I know this encounter with the Sasquatch happened to you back in 1974, and I really enjoyed hearing what happened to you with the whole ghost situation. Thank you so much for taking the time to come on and share it, Scott. I enjoyed chatting with you.
Well, thank you, Wes. I enjoyed being on with you and talking to you. And I would like to actually thank my sister, Laura, for asking, do I listen to Sasquatch Chronicles? And I want to thank her for letting me know, hey, you need to check this out. You need to call him.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that. I'm glad you brought that up. Laura, thank you so much. Shout out to you. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I know you're kind of a new listener to the show, Scott. And Laura, thank you so much. And Scott, thank you so much for coming on, man.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Wes. I appreciate it.
Next up on the show, I want to welcome Jennifer. Jennifer, thanks for coming on.
Hey, thank you.
Jennifer, I'm glad to have you on tonight. You had an encounter just a couple weeks ago out there in Georgia. If you would you start from the very beginning? Kind of tell us what you were doing and walk us into what happened.
Okay. Well, August 11th of this year, my daughter had rented a house up in Georgia, Blue Ridge Mountains, and she invited me to come with her and her husband and my grandson for a small trip up there. And I said, sure. So we got to the house, and now the house that she rented was straight up the mountain. I mean, my son-in-law was having a hard time driving the car up the mountain. That's how high up we were. So we got to the house that they had rented. It was a beautiful house, a log cabin-looking house, and pulled in the driveway. And the driveway had big gravel rocks. And my son-in-law stopped the car, and my daughter and son-in-law were starting to unpack. And my grandson was also with us on our trip. And so to keep him occupied while my daughter and son-in-law were unpacking the car, I told my grandson, I said, come on with me. We're going to go check the place out. So my grandson and I were walking around the house. We hadn't been in the house, just on the outside. And at the end of the driveway was this fence, and with these rocks, and there was a steep incline past the fence. So I told my grandson, I said, let's throw some rocks down at the trees. So we're throwing rocks all in the woods, and you can hear it hitting the trees down below and everything. And my daughter gets everything out of the car, and we go in the house, and everything's fine. We're doing our thing. And then come nighttime, and this is Wednesday night, my daughter has the room upstairs. The house is 3 floors, and my daughter has the bedroom upstairs. I have the bedroom on the first floor, which is where the kitchen and living area is. And then they also have a bedroom downstairs where they also had the activity with the pool table that the house came with, but I didn't want to sleep downstairs. So everybody got ready Wednesday night for bed. I went in my room and unpacked some of my stuff. Got in my bed, and in my room there is a window to my right of my head, and to the left is glass doors that you can go out on the porch that wrap completely around the house, and it was screened in. So I'm laying there Wednesday night, and I'm just laying there because I can't sleep, and all of a sudden I can hear stuff being thrown at the window, not at the doors, but at the window to my right. And it sounded like, it reminded me of acorns is what it reminded me of. But it was a lot. It wasn't just like one fell. It was like a handful. And I thought, wow, that kind of tripped me out. I just let it go. And so come Thursday morning, we got up and we went and did our stuff. Nothing exciting happened. Went to bed Thursday night, nothing happened. Friday we got up and did our stuff, went in town and, the usual routine of vacationing, come back home. And then Friday night, I wanted to call my husband. And because we were so far up in the mountains, I had to either lean over the porch railing or walk up to the road at the end of the driveway to call him because I couldn't get a signal. So Friday night after dinner, it was about 5:30. It was starting to get dark because you're up in the mountains and the trees were so huge it was covering everything, starting to look dark. I walked up to the road, and as I'm walking up to the road to call my husband, I could hear this something hitting a tree. It was like someone was taking a stick and hitting the tree. And I remember thinking, what is that noise? And so I walked up to the road, and I'm standing there with a cup of coffee, and I've got my phone in my pocket, and I'm listening, and I could hear this something hitting this tree. Then all of a sudden, within 5 minutes, I see across the road from me is nothing but forest. To my right is nothing but forest. So across the road, I'm trying to look through the trees and bushes and that. Couldn't see anything. But to the right, all I seen was all these bushes move real quick. And I'm standing there watching. All of a sudden, that's when I heard this horrible, horrible, deep growl. Never heard anything like it before. And my first instinct was, get away from here. Now, it did not sound like a bear. I grew up in Michigan. I have hunters in my family. I know everybody has said, well, oh, yeah, okay. But this growl was so deep and scary, I just froze, and I started walking back because whatever it was, I wanted to make sure I could see. Walking backwards, I could see it coming at me. So I walked back as far as I could and turned around, walked in the house, and I went and got my daughter. My son-in-law is a police officer. My daughter was a police officer for 15 years and changed careers. And so she knows all about guns. So I told my daughter, I said, grab a gun and come with me to the road. I heard something and I've never heard it before. So she grabbed her gun. We went walking up to the road where I had stood and we're listening and didn't hear nothing. And then my grandson come out, and I was trying to keep him quiet because he's, a typical kid, and he's 8 years old, and he had a stick with him. And I told him, I said, Liam, bang on this tree. So he banged on this tree, and then we heard that sound, but it wasn't like right as loud as what I heard it. My daughter heard it, but you could tell whatever it was further away. I told my daughter, I said, okay, let's go back in the house. So this is Thursday night. So we go back in the house, finish doing the dinner and everything, get ready for bed. My daughter and son-in-law, they go upstairs, and their son is sleeping with them in the same room, but on the couch or something up there. So I go to my room, and I walk in my room, and I just had this fear of something looking at me. Even though there was blinds on the windows and on the doors, I just couldn't sleep in that room. I didn't feel safe. So I walked out to the living room and laid down on the couch. And the couch that I was laying on had the wraparound porch all the way around, just like I said, and it was screened in. I positioned myself on the couch so that to my left of me on the porch that was enclosed with a screen enclosure was this huge table with chairs. So I figured, well, if anything comes up, I'll hear it because I'm sure they'll hit the chairs and table. The door that we usually come in and out of the house had a blind on it, and my son-in-law always left the porch light on. So I figured, okay, I can see if anything comes up on the porch, the shadow. And so I'm laying there, and my son-in-law and daughter-in-law are upstairs in their room watching TV. And then, because they had their door open, and they sleep with a box fan to block out the noise. So finally they turned off the TV, and I could tell they went to sleep. They were going to bed. And about a half an hour, 45 minutes, I'm still laying there and I'm not moving. To the right of me, at the back of the house, what I heard was it sounded like a big rock hit the back of the house, And right as this big rock hit the back of the house, this screeching bird, and I don't want to say monkey or baboon, but that's what it sounded like, followed that big rock hitting the house. And I remember thinking, what in the hell was that? I didn't know what it was. I never heard anything like it before in my life. So I'm laying there contemplating, should I go upstairs and get my daughter or what? And I'm like, no, I don't want to do that because I don't want to scare everybody. So I'm laying there, and about another 45 minutes to an hour, now I hear this first big thump, and it sounded like a tree log or a huge rock hit the dirt. And that noise came from the direction of where my head was positioned on the couch behind me. And I'm thinking, is somebody throwing rocks or tree logs? That's what it sounded like to me. So I heard the first thump, and then 10 seconds, 15 seconds later, heard the second thump. And I'm thinking, what? I didn't know what to think. And so I'm laying there, not moving, because I don't know if they can see me through the windows, even with the blinds. I don't know. So I'm laying there, and then within, I don't know, probably about a half an hour, to the left of me, same direction where the table and the chairs are at on the porch, now I'm hearing something hit a tree. And, just like you're taking a big log and you're hitting a tree, that's what I'm hearing. And I heard that for about 3 or 4 times, and then it stopped. And I just continued laying there, didn't get up, didn't do anything until I seen daylight. And I was up all night. And then once I got up off the couch, I seen it was daylight out. I figured everything was cool. My daughter and son-in-law came down. I didn't tell them about what had happened. I didn't tell my daughter until the next day because I didn't want to alarm her son, if he was in the room and I'm talking about hearing these noises and that. But that's basically what happened. And to this day, I have a hard time sleeping at night because of the remembering how it sounded when I first encountered the noise. Never heard nothing, like I said, never heard nothing like that at all before. But yeah, that's what happened to me.
Yeah, I understand the way you feel. I remember after my own encounter, I'd close my eyes at night and I would hear the growl for months. And I don't know why a growl would affect people like that, but it does. And I think until you hear it, you just don't get it. You can try and describe it, you can try and articulate it any way you want, but at the end of the day, you almost kind of have to hear it to really understand the power behind it. And I've been asked several times, what does a growl really sound like? Is it like a canine? And it's nothing like a canine. I remember one time I heard an alligator growl, and I was like, if you took that and amplified it, and that's very, very close. Here's what an alligator sounds like when it's growling. But it's kind of like that. I mean, it's, more powerful, but I mean, that's kind of what I heard. I don't know if you'll agree or not.
Yep, exactly. And it's so deep what I heard, you know what I'm saying? The growl was very, very deep.
Oh yeah, I agree completely. Take the alligator's kind of like what it sounds like. Basically, take that and amplify it by 1,000 and add some more bass into it, and that's kind of what it sounds like. So I get it completely, Jennifer. Did you ever talk to your daughter, and what does she think was going on up there?
She believes what I have told her, and she believes that it could possibly have been, as they say, a Bigfoot or whatever. She doesn't know what it could have been per se, but she does believe that I heard what I heard. She just wished that I would have came up there and woke her up. But I'm thinking, well, maybe it was better not to at this point, after the fact, because I wouldn't have wanted her to go out there or my son-in-law.
Yeah, and you could pass the acorns off and say, well, it fell from a tree or that sort of thing. But the one that hit the back of the house, the big rock that hit the back of the house, you really can't pass off. And if you don't believe in Sasquatch, then there was a bunch of people out there messing with you guys, throwing rocks at the house in the middle of the night, which is just as terrifying.
Yeah, and in my room where I heard the acorns, there's no trees on that side of the house, and what is there is the house was set up so to the right was my bedroom, and to the left was the bathroom downstairs on the same floor as the kitchen and living room. You go through to another hallway into another room is a washer and dryer that we had access to, and then you go up the stairs and over the garage. It appeared like a mother-in-law suite. And so between my window and and the garage is just dirt. There's no trees there. It's like the overpass for that mother-in-law suite, like the roofing. So there's no trees near that window that would have done that because it's covered by the garage. It's right there. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that's what was concerning to me, is that there's no trees there. There's nothing there. It's the garage roof. It's one big roof over. And then, because you could actually walk underneath. See? So I don't know.
Yeah, and I know that you were a working professional, and I won't go into what you did, Jennifer, but you're retired now, but you've lived a life, you've been in some very strange situations. What did you think was actually going on here?
I actually think it was two Bigfoots, even as far off as that may sound. I think it was two of them. I think they were young ones for some reason. I don't know. But I honestly think it was two of them. And I think when my grandson and I were throwing rocks down the side of that house and banging on trees, they heard that and they came to see what it was. I think I also, animals can smell you, and I think they could smell me. Because it just seems strange that it's like it all happened when I was in the house, and I just feel that animals can smell you no matter where you're at.
Yeah, a lot of people describe the growl, Jennifer, and as you did, and as I tried to, and it's so hard to kind of describe it. When people are that close to Sasquatch, they'll hear it and they can come back and describe it. Any other normal wildlife, let's take Georgia, for example. What is it? Black bears out there. If you're that close and you're hearing a black bear, you are in big trouble. You're probably going to die. You can't outrun them. You can't outswim them. You're not going to go match them toe to toe in a fight. You're in big trouble. And if they're that close, they're going to come for you.
They would start charging you, is what they would do, if it was a bear that. But yeah, that was no bear. And from experiences that I've had in Michigan with living with hunters, my whole family, as we used to go deer hunting every November, a bear can smell you way before you even see them. And they're not going to be coming around you like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and thank God that they can. And thank God that most of the time they want nothing to do with us. It's kind of a blessing that they can hear and smell and see us before we even are coming. And I know after this incident, you're having trouble sleeping and that sort of thing. But trust me, time does help.
Oh, I hope so, because I haven't been able to sleep at night. It's been tough.
Did you guys ever contact the guy that runs that cabin and ask him if anyone else has ever had anything strange happen out there?
No, I hadn't thought about that, but I will. Yeah.
I'm sure you guys weren't the only ones to experience it out there, Let me ask you, Jennifer, I ask everyone, what do you think Sasquatch is? Obviously, there's no wrong answer because no one really knows, but what's your opinion as far as what Sasquatch actually is?
What's my opinion? My opinion is that anything is possible. And are they real? Yes, in my opinion, they are. They most certainly are. Where they came from, I have no idea. But yeah, I do believe that they are real.
Yeah, no one really knows. With time, it does help. I know this just happened to you 2.5 weeks ago, kind of one of those things to where it shocks you, it shocks your system to go through something like this. And even though you didn't see the creature, I think a lot of people have this type of experience, and it really helps to talk about it. And when you and I were talking, Jennifer, I was sitting there, you were telling me about Danny, and I was like, man, whoever this Danny guy is, he really knows his stuff. A lot of stuff that I was going to tell you about, he's already told you. And come to find out, Danny's your son. He's a listener of the show. So I I want to give a shout out to Danny, your son. Thank you so much for listening.
Yes, he lives in Portland, Oregon, and he's constantly in the woods, and I'm constantly reminding him to be careful, So, yes.
Yeah, like I said, when you were telling me about Danny, Danny told you that, telling you different things. I was like, man, I really got to have this guy on the show. This guy really knows his stuff. Come to find out he's a listener, which doesn't surprise me. He knows as much as he does. But, Jennifer, with time, it does get better. Trust me, it does definitely gets better with time. And it helps to have people come forward, especially in situations like this where they don't really know what's going on, because this type of encounter does happen a lot. And I really do appreciate the fact that you come on and share it, and I enjoyed chatting with you.
All right, thank you.
And that's it for tonight, everyone. Remember, if you've had an encounter, shoot me an email. My email address is wes@sasquatchchronicles.com. If you get a chance, check out sasquatchchronicles.com. You can become a member and get additional shows. Look for my Blind Frog Ranch podcast video coming out in the next day or two. Have a good night, everyone.